We sit down with creators, founders, and entrepreneurs who are shaping tomorrow to get an inside view on how they think, lead, and act, and the struggles that go with it. I'm Nick Hughes, and this is Founders Live Conversations. Today we have a drink with Joel Carben, CEO of Ideal Seat, to get his perspective on the sports ticketing space, his experience being a founder, and being a family man at the same time. Hey Joel.
Hey Nick.
Welcome to Founders Live.
How are you? Good to see you.
Got you a beer. Cheers. Welcome to Founders Live.
Thanks, Nick.
We're sitting here at the Collective Chemistry Bar. It's awesome. We got longboard on cold beer here, and thank you for joining me, Joel.
Yeah. You're welcome. Very cool to be here.
Before we get into Ideal Seat and your growth, which is awesome, let's go back a little bit to your youth. Where'd you grow up? What did you study? And then how did you get into being an entrepreneur?
Very cool. So I grew up in New York City, in the 70s and 80s, which was a pretty cool time to be in New York City.
Where specifically in New York City?
I was first in the Bronx, and then my family moved out to Long Island.
Nice.
Long Island, as we say, if you have a really bad Long Island accent. And you can always pick off the Long Islanders and the folks from New Jersey pretty easily because we have these horrible accents. Right. And then I eventually moved into Brooklyn, where I spent most of my formative years, and then moved out to Seattle.
Nice.
About 10 years ago.
Nice. So you grew up in Brooklyn, you're saying, youth, high school, that sort of thing.
Long Island, I'd say, was the main years for high school. A little town called Centerport, which is in Huntington, about Mid-Island.
Oh, yeah.
It's a mix of the beauty of, Long Island, but also sort of suburban. So there's always this angst of when can we get out of the suburbs and when can we get into the city and be more creative.
Right. And what did you take growing up in that area? What did you adopt into maybe adult and even being a founder? Is there anything that you took from growing up it's different than in Northwest for sure?
Yeah. Well, I have to give a lot of credit to my parents, especially my father. He was a statistician at Reader's Digest. So
interesting.
I'm getting goosebumps now, and I got to run around in 1980 a lot of the original supercomputers, which were these awesome tape drives, reel-to-reel tape drives.
Whoa.
And I was 5, running around like a little kid in these awesome futuristic supercomputers. And then when my father would have projects, he'd get me programming in DOS at 5 years old. And I'd be at this little terminal writing programs. So that was really inspirational to me, and that kind of created the basis of being a data geek, basically.
Yeah. We'll get to that. So where'd you go to school? College?
So when I first got into school, I wanted to go as far to the West Coast as possible. I was really intrigued by that, so I went to Colorado College between 92 and 97, Colorado Springs, and that was a great education. It has something called the block plan, which I think is great for entrepreneurs. Do you know what the block plan is? So it's, instead of having 4 classes concurrently, you take 1 class per month, focus on it super intensely.
Right.
At the end of that month, you finish up your class, and then you go to the next class. And you do that 4 times a semester. And it's kind of like
interesting
being in a sprint, basically.
Right. So let's break that down real quick, because I think that's really, really important and helpful to founders that might be watching this. Let's go deeper into describing you learned very quickly to dive deep and focus and basically come to a conclusion. Describe that a little bit.
It's very interesting to reflect back. It's almost like there's that school of thought of learning how to do things really quickly, get up to speed, almost get to a point of mastery, and then close the book and move on to the next thing. But really thinking about it, it almost was like I chose that school and style as much as it chose me.
Yeah. Because
my learning style was always very intense, and I really wanted to learn something and obsess about it, and be what is this bottle, and what is this label, and then be okay, I figured out what this bottle is about.
Move on.
I'm ready to tackle this next cool thing and get really into it. So I kind of matched the entrepreneur and the intense learning style.
Right. So how do you use that now? How do you find yourself intensely tackling an aspect of the business? I think I'm just pointing this out because I think you learned very quickly or very early on in your life how to dive deep versus spread wide. And that's important as a founder.
So like how did you do that? Like,
So, I think it's interesting is right now, we're at Ideal Seat, so we provide recommendations for ticketing companies like a StubHub. We use data to say where is the most family-friendly seat or where's the best beer in the stadium. When we first started out with our co-founders Spencer Fornashari and Adam Navarrete, the problems were much simpler. It was literally like, where is the best place to catch a foul ball? What data do you need to get there? And then how do you deliver it to someone so they can purchase this
and
ticket?
how did you get this information?
So for that, I was coming out of projects with the Seattle Seahawks and the Seattle Mariners that I worked on from 09 and 11. Paul Allen's Vulcan Group was very interested in the experience, the technology in the stadiums. He's, of course, part owner of the Seahawks. So we got really into obsessing about the fan experience in the stadiums. And then we literally saw that the excitement around the experience of catching a foul ball, and we found there was no data. So we created these technology tools to track foul balls during games. Really like simple, geeky iPhone, iPad systems.
And at this time, you guys are sitting there like putting that into the application?
We were everything A to Z.
Okay.
We were like literally like the product manager, the researcher, the data collector, the analyzer. We created the heat maps, and we put them on our blog. So I guess we were also the webmasters, and then we would answer all questions. So we were also customer service. So we were like literally we could solve all these problems. But it was this really focused that solving this one problem. How do you use data to make a ticketing decision? And then we had a watershed moment, which was a fan caught 4 foul balls in a game, and we were on ESPN.
Same fan.
The same fan caught 4 foul balls in one game. I remember his name, Greg Van Neal, Progressive Field.
Oh my gosh.
The day before the All-Star break 2013, and we got a call from ESPN.
No way.
Yes. And
that is amazing. What's the probability of that happening? You have to know this.
This is exactly what it is. It's 1 in a trillion. It's 1 in 1,000 to the 4th power.
Are you
we only would know
serious?
that from like focusing so crystal clear on this one thing for
There's the data geek.
This time period.
Yeah.
But it paid off because we were experts in. We had mastered this little problem, which seems like a total oddball problem.
Right.
But that led us, that next week we had more traffic to our website than we'd had previous year and a half, to the point where it almost crashed the whole system.
Right.
They usually hear people talk about this moment fondly, where your system is almost crashed or is crashed.
Yeah.
That's like it's a cool moment, right? Like we actually had that much demand. And the fascinating thing is fans came through and they said, oh, this is cool. But do you also know the best place to get a beer at the stadium? I want to buy a ticket. I have no idea where that is.
Right.
I want to know where the best food is. I'm taking my 4 and 6-year-old to the game. Where's the most family friendly? An interesting one was always like, I see you know where the foul balls are. Do you know where they aren't? Because I don't want to get nailed by one. So, that created the framework for the business.
Right.
We said, oh, wow, this is not just a unique problem. There's like a whole range of data problems.
And why haven't stadiums and teams tackled that, or have they even now? Like, why do they not care about this information?
That's a good question. I wouldn't say they don't care about it. I think they do care. The ticketing industry and teams, it's still a pretty basic business operation. There's still a lot of things that happen on pen and paper. There's still a lot of things that happen on phones.
Seriously?
Yep, very
Wow.
seriously. Some of their sun and shade maps are like laminated things, and they're on the phone. Someone calls in, can you tell me where the sun and shade seat is? And they're looking at this laminated card that they pass around the office. So for us as entrepreneurs, like that's something that's ripe for disruptions. We're like, it's still pen and paper. It's still really old school. It's interesting. Sports business and ticketing, it is a big money business, but it's still, the margins are still pretty tight. So it feels like you don't take as much risk to advance your technologies. You kind of stick with the old way of doing things because they are still profitable, right? Because it's something that's always in demand. You always want to have a ticket to the Seahawks game, as long as they're winning, of course.
So yeah, I want to fast forward a little bit. One of the areas I want to talk about is you took an awesome trip a couple years ago.
Yes.
You described the trip and what you learned from it.
So the trip was in 2015. We had just launched the business as a full-time business. We'd raised our first round of funding. And the first version of the business was actually to have a ticketing system. So like a StubHub, like a SeatGeek, we wanted to sell tickets directly to you, the customer. What we realized is that a big part of that was marketing, and we had very little marketing budget. We'd spent almost everything on the product.
Yeah.
So to counteract that, what we did is we wanted to drive around to all 30 stadiums and go talk to all the customers and say, here's this app, what do you like? Would you use this? Would you buy an experience? We learned so much from talking to all those fans. Ultimately, that they had bought tickets before and they didn't have the information on mobile especially. So that was super valuable. The thing that came out of that was even more valuable was we talked to several teams and several ticketing companies. And from a lot of them, we heard, oh, this is great information. Can we just buy the data from you? And out of that, at the end of the year, we said, we can either keep going B2C or we can go B2B. And the team got together, and we had some great advisors. Manish Gowdy was one of them, and we designed a pivot where we went from B2C to B2B. So it was 4 months of what I would call the ultimate, customer discovery.
Right.
Really getting into how do you know your customer really deeply.
That is an amazing story. I remember when you went on this trip, you were planning it, and we talked about it, and we strategized a little bit. But I feel like what you just did at that time was like you went to the full length of a customer discovery journey. And do you think the company would be where it is if you didn't do that?
No.
So
I don't think so.
So your thoughts and advice to other founders would be do whatever it takes, right? So describe that a little bit more of you chose to drive how many miles?
15,568.
15,000
Yes.
in how many months?
That was 4 months. 40 states plus Canada.
To find answers.
To go where the customer lives and really, get deep on it.
And do you realize there's founders in this city and other places that won't even go outside their office to talk to the customers that they should be talking to? That's huge, right?
Yes.
So you have gone to lengths to figure this out, which I think is amazing. It's honorable, and I think it brought you to where you are today. So let's go exactly today. Where is Ideal Seat, and where is it going?
So out of that journey, we had a really good sense of direction, which is cool because you start up, you have the concept, you have some initial traction. You're like, okay, we want to create this system.
Yeah.
But coming out of this, we had a much higher level of focus, which was, okay, we'll sell data to ticketing companies and teams. We designed this whole strategy to pivot to the secondary market. In particular, in ticketing, there's primary, teams, secondary is StubHub, Vivid, SeatGeek, anyone who's reselling, brokers. So we put a very targeted strategy. We're going to go out year 1 and get secondary. We're going to go out year 2 and get primary. And was very successful the first year. We signed our first company. We did college football, a company called Bandwagon. A quick side note is we did a ton of startup competitions and accelerators.
Yeah.
One of them was a thing called Sports Tank. We were one of 10 finalist companies. One of the people in the audience was a former competitor, Harold Hughes, who's a very, very awesome, futuristic data ticketing crossover. And he, literally tweeted us the next day, I love this. How do we get you on board? That was our first customer.
Yeah.
Doing college football, starting with Clemson. Even with this, our whole team has spent a ton of time at college football games, getting into, okay, what's college football about? And then we always branded ourselves, even from day one, we were always like, this is the mashup of TripAdvisor meets StubHub.
Right.
That was always the vision. And our second customer actually ended up being StubHub, which is a company that does about $1 billion a year, about $250 million of profit.
Yeah.
It is the company other than Ticketmaster. So that was year one.
Yeah.
That was very successful. Then we had the traction, and then we went out and raised some money. So we've raised about $500,000.
Great.
And then we've grown the team. We have 11 people now, including building out a data science team, a sales team, bringing some really senior executives from the leagues, which is really cool. I mean, it's a much deeper, more diverse team now, which is super cool. And then we've been pushing this year to start to broaden our customer base. And this goal was to get some teams on board. And so just about a month ago, we signed our first team, and that's the Seattle Storm, which is a WNBA team.
That's really great.
So we're really pumped. It's a local team.
Yeah.
We get to work closely. Their people are awesome. And women's basketball is so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's awesome to be part of.
That's great. Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
And so I do want to transition. You mentioned your team, and walk me through the process of going from like a few co-founders where you're just scraping by to onboarding, when you're ready to hire new employees. There is a process of how you evaluate individuals, how you plan on, what positions and areas of the company you want to hire on. How did you approach that? I mean, it's not easy at all.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you know the answer to that?
You turning the tables here?
A little bit. It's hard to do.
Yeah.
I mean, part of it is you're looking for certain roles, right off the bat. Even though I had some background with data and sports business, was always looking for an awesome tech person, who was like super passionate about sports and data, and found that at a place Surf Incubator, where we used to have our business and our startups.
That's where we met.
That was Spencer, our now CTO.
Great.
We met literally watching World Cup games. I think we crashed the Surf server a couple of times. And I said, okay, that's a cool guy. He's into it, and he was already hacking on neat data projects. I was like, okay, this is an awesome co-founder, something to connect with. And then this is interesting. Then the second person running our platform being a B2C play, the vision was to have someone really good at marketing. Both designing the user experience and all of the marketing, which we would have to kind of do guerrilla style to do any sort of competition with a StubHub or SeatGeek. Like SeatGeek has raised like $100 million just to do marketing, right? That's how you win. That's how you turn a startup into a competitor of StubHub or Ticketmaster. You have to raise $100 million marketing. That's the only way you're going to even sniff it, right? So we brought him on, and his role has changed a lot in our pivot. And kudos to him to really step up and like take this kind of like more B2C mentality, and then we had to pivot and get him more into a marketing role to businesses. And then over time, you see pretty naturally where are the pieces. We were talking earlier around operations, finance, sales team. We hired two awesome folks. In the Bay Area, one who came out of the 49ers and one who came out of the San Francisco Giants. And they had that, they've been in sports their whole lives, around teams and ticketing. So that was a natural fit. And then, we try and round it out with some really experienced advisors. There's people who you can, buy in with some equity, and you can really get them to pick apart your strategy. And now the third layer of this whole system is the investors, and they're kind of like advisors, but they have even a little bit more skin in the game. And I spoke on a panel this morning, which was data-driven startups and fundraising, and ultimately, even though we haven't raised a ton, our investors we have very, very smart money. Including a local guy, James, who's the CEO of a local ticket broker company.
Great.
And not only has he brought money, but he's also brought other investors. He has a great reputation in industry. He brings us in on business projects. I mean, like that's the smartest of money. So that's kind of how you round out a very lean team at this scale. You fill holes. You have the dedicated people where you need them the most. And then you try and have the outside be all the places you need advice on strategy.
And at what point do you realize I need to not do this anymore. I need to fill the role with someone else, because a lot of founders, especially like early founding teams, whether they're sole individuals or a couple of people, they're just doing everything, right? And so at what point were you saying to yourself, outside of that you have the capital, first and foremost, you got to be able to pay someone a salary or at least compensation. But at what point did you offboard those responsibilities to someone else?
Basically, when I'm pulling my hair out. So yeah, I don't have much up here.
Pretty tight curls, man.
You look at the pictures over 5 years, you notice the
I did
hair
notice.
has gotten shorter and shorter.
I did notice that.
You can, all joking aside, you can feel it. If you're doing too much in general or in any specific area, you can almost at an energy level.
Yeah.
You're like, shit, like I just can't sustain this.
Yeah.
And then you have to make some tough decisions around, okay, and we all feel this in the business. It's like you have this range of responsibilities, you're hustling, really hustling, right? For very little in terms of what you're getting back in compensation in the beginning. So you gotta be pretty darn dedicated, right? And then you're like, okay, I have these 3 functions. Mine have generally been, sales, fundraising, some mode of product development.
Right.
Over time, it's become more and more fundraising, really.
Mm-hmm.
And sales was a hard one because sales was not my natural fit. I was more like a product and really interested in data products.
Yeah.
So that was a natural thing to lean towards. But I realized pretty quickly that I had to do sales.
Yeah.
Even though it wasn't like the thing I wanted to do. It wasn't the natural like, oh, I want to go sell, I want to sign deals.
Here's the thing is it's not natural to most people. So how did you get through and graduate to like, I'm actually okay or good at sales? Did you just push through it, or was there a few things that you did or learned that put you in a position of confidence? It's not easy at all. And most CEO founders realize, oh shoot, I am the number 1 salesman, even if you didn't know at the time.
You just gotta
But were you like, you finally realized I need to create these spreadsheets, I need to run a process, I need to document things. Like, how did you learn? Was it just through mistake, or how did you learn that?
Yeah, a little bit of a process, calls,
Yeah.
hear feedback, same questions, and then document it in some form.
Yeah.
Where do you get success? Where do you get traction? And then where do you, get doors shut? You got to be pretty resilient, right? Because you're going to get a lot of no's. Fundraising, sales, same thing. It's a rejection game.
And so how many outreaches, emails, calls would you put to the number where you then just say, okay, they're not going to respond and I need to move on?
Kind of a 3, rules of 3.
Yeah.
First is a warm-up, intro, hey, almost everyone's interested. Who doesn't want like cool technology, cool data, fan experience, sports fan, it's a pretty natural, in fact, that's a problem for us, is almost getting too much excitement around what we do. And then you got to weed through that. Okay, is this something you're thinking about? Is this something you have budget for? Are you the right person we're even speaking to?
Exactly.
Are you the SVP of ticketing? Or are you, like in the marketing department? Get smarter about that. And then by call 3, it's, it's a yes or no. What would you like to do? Are you ready to proceed? No. Of course, you're going to keep them, in the pipeline and the cycle, but you have to, with our team being so small, you have to really quickly make that call. Like, how much energy are you going to spend to develop it?
Yeah.
So just trial by fire. I think we set out when we pivoted in 2016. We put about a year of timeline. That we would do this for a year and either get results or that would be it, right?
Yeah.
Or we'd have to find something else. And very luckily we got those 2, one small, one big. That was enough validation and, good amount of revenue too.
Yeah.
Compared to, we probably like 10x at one year from selling tickets directly to business customers. So that was like, oh shit, like we actually have some decent revenue now. And on top of that, we can go raise money. So a little bit trial by fire, and then you figure it out. And then you hit a threshold where you're like, I can do this, but I know there's people who are smarter and quicker and can open some more doors, and that's where you bring those people in and accelerate the growth.
Man, I remember some of these times. We've talked many times. We're good friends.
Yes.
how did you? There was some valleys in this. We've skipped over a lot. Clearly, there were some valleys. How did you get through those valleys, man?
Oh yeah, it was tough. There's been a lot of challenges.
Yeah.
I have a lot of responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
I'm married, 2 kids, 4 and 6, right? If you think about it, like probably this was not the most opportune time in life to do a startup.
Right.
Right around literally when my second child was born, basically. But that's kind of when it was all happening.
Yeah.
I can't really explain it. Maybe that was a time when the creative juices were, flowing in life, plus adrenaline, plus a little bit of sleep deprivation, and it was really hard, and just got really obsessed about the data and the information, and I think that's really what kept the focus. Was always knowing that there was this problem to be solved, but ultimately to the question of how do you handle the downside, and there's always depression and you get rejected 50 times in a row. You're like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah.
This is not that bad of an idea.
Right.
This is not that bad of a company. Why is no one getting this, right? I'm sure every entrepreneur has said this in their head a million times. Why doesn't this person get this? Why doesn't this investor get this? And you have to turn that around, and I think ultimately I mean it's a support network.
Yeah.
From yourself, literally having people around you who have been in that experience, having your team backing you up, right? Because you're all going through it together. You got to really let people know what it's like. Too many people hold it inside. You can't keep that all inside.
No.
It's I see people do that, and then I see the crash.
Yeah.
And it's brutal, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, you want to help them, but you have to be able to exchange that energy and let people know what you're going through.
So are you suggesting having a few individuals, confidants that you would be able to talk to? Is it other founders? What did you find helped you? Because at some points in time as a founder, there's things that you need to keep in, close. Mm-hmm. Information that is not beneficial if it gets out.
Yes.
That's the way we live in this community and this industry, unfortunately. But who did you choose to release this information to, which is a healthy thing?
Mm-hmm. Well, less on the business side, and probably as much the co-founder and the internal group with some close friends, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
those are people who are separated enough from it that can give you the perspective. Because when you're in it, you're like literally, you're like this.
Yep.
And you're trying to push this rock up the
hill. This is
you're like
assume founder position. Yeah.
So I think a mix of the team support, and then you go back to your circle of friends, really your significant other. I mean, that's one of your co-founders, right?
Yeah.
Is your significant other.
Do you find that you can go to the depths with her and it's okay, or some significant others are just like, I don't want to talk about it, because it just can be such an issue between two people if they're married or they're dating.
Is this being recorded?
Yes.
No, we're Rachel and I love you, babe, wherever the camera is. We have pretty awesome transparency.
That's good.
She's a founder. She has her own business.
That's great.
She's literally worked with Bill and Melinda Gates, so she's worked with some of the most high-profile people. She's been in the pressure cooker of positions. Yeah. So we go pretty deep. Our family is super, super tight.
Good.
And we put a high value on relationship experience.
Right.
We'll sacrifice a little bit of cash for more time together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that bond's really strengthened us to go through this process. But you literally, like you're saying, Nick, you can't literally say everything. Because here's one of the biggest challenges. So much is happening. You're a founder in a small startup. How many things are happening in a month?
Hundreds, if not thousands. I'm in it right now, as you are too, and it's just every day you come home and you just want to say this happened, this happened, this happened, and sometimes that's great, but sometimes it's too much, and it can actually overtake your relationship. And that's what I would suggest any founder think about is, what is enough and what is too much, and what is getting in the way of growth as two individuals in a relationship versus all you want to do is talk about your company and your business. Trust me, there's a point where they don't want to hear about it anymore.
Exactly.
So final advice, going through that and knowing that you guys, your family is so tight, some people might not have that, but what would you say is maybe a point of advice to someone that, let's say they're married or someone is intending on being married? How would they approach bringing in their significant other? Is it full transparency? What's your advice on that?
Yeah, that's an awesome one. I guess I would have to go back, and this is a lesson I'm still learning, is because being a founder, it can times a lot be about you and about your ego. And it's like, okay, the attention's on me, or the focus is on me, or the pressure's on me. I think you have to be as much about seeking support as giving support.
Yeah.
So you can't just go home every day and be like, oh, I'm so excited, it's awesome. Give me some support. Oh, I'm freaking depressed, this sucks. Give me some support. You got to be about half the time, at least, going to be like, okay, how's your day?
Yeah.
How can I support you? I know you have as much going on as I do. Everyone has the same amount going on, really, in reality. So I always feel like in my relationships, and I guess one of my life goals is to support others as much as they support me.
Yeah.
Hopefully support others more than they support me.
Right.
And I feel like that's the cool thing about growing a team is it's the opportunity to really support others to do amazing things, because everyone can do amazing things, right? So it's how do you create that support so others can do amazing things? And then if they're doing amazing things, then your company's just doing kick-ass, or your family's just doing kick-ass, right? Because then you're like, oh shit. And then you get to be a part of it, which is just the icing on the cake, right?
We got to close on that.
That's a life goal.
That's
right
amazing. That's amazing. Joel, love you, man.
Yeah, love
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Cheers.
You're welcome. Cheers.